Hello friends, this is Hedda. Now I may have gotten a bit carried away with that intro, but I just really like the spooky mood of October and I ran with it. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but it fits my theme this month, so yeah. If you don't know who I am, hi, my name is Hedda. I'm a Norwegian artist and I like to make my bullet journal look nice. Before getting into the extremely long process of my October bullet journal spreads, I just want to say that I have a bunch of new stickers in my shop right now. And two of them are really great for October and spooky season, so definitely check those out if that's something that you're into. One of them is witchy and the other one has some demon cats, and you'll see a lot more of those in this video because my theme for October is demon cats. I'm a cat person, but I've never done a cat theme before in my 4+ years of bullet journaling. So I'm doing it now, and I probably chose the worst medium to work with, so bear with me while I struggle with this paint. I really love how the cover page turned out in the end. I just think that the cat looks so cool. The flowers were originally supposed to be marigolds, so the shape kind of looks like marigolds, but then when I tested some colors, I felt like orange and yellow wasn't right for this, so I changed it to purple, and I think that was the right decision. So now they're fantasy flowers, and I'm cool with that. The demon cats are inspired by Japanese folklore, actually. There is a kind of yokai, a kind of demon, I guess, called a bakeneko. But there's also another cat demon called a nekomata, and supposedly that's the one that has two tails and not the bakeneko. So if that's the case, then I guess I'm doing it a bit wrong. But then again, they aren't really depicted with 3 eyes most of the time either. So just like the marigolds, the demon cats are fantasy cats inspired by Japanese folklore. So there's that artistic interpretation. But let's talk a bit about the paint, because I did say that I chose the worst medium. I guess that was a bit of an exaggeration, but it's not a medium that you've seen me work with very often in my bullet journal. Last time was June 2020, if I remember correctly. So it's been 1.5 years since last time I tried this. First of all, I have 2 different kinds of gouache. I have Holbein acrylic gouache, and then I have Winsor & Newton water-based gouache. So they behave slightly different, but I'm just mixing them together here because I don't have that many colors to choose from in the first place. And especially when creating the purple, I found that the water-based gouache just made a much nicer purple than the acrylic gouache that I had. But secondly, I'm not a good painter. Like, I think I'm good at drawing, but I've never really considered myself a good painter. I remember when I was younger, like when I was a teenager, I thought that you weren't a real artist unless you used paint. So I tried all kinds of acrylic paint, watercolors, etc., but it was never really a match made in heaven, you know, and I always went back to my markers. But last year, I really wanted to get better at gouache, because painting is fun when you know what you're doing. I mean, most of the time I don't know what I'm doing, but I hope to change that eventually. So I got the Mossery art box by Sibylline Maynet last winter. I made a video about it, unboxing it and everything. And I've been doing a little bit of practicing here and there since then, but honestly I still consider myself a beginner. So I don't know what exactly compelled me to use gouache as my medium for this monthly setup, but here we are. I guess a part of the reason why I wanted to do it was because there are a couple of super talented YouTubers that I watch, and that's Anna from Journal Away and Calliope from Calliope Liviaki. They both use paint a lot in their bullet journal and in their artwork in general, and I'm just so amazed at what they do every month. So I guess this setup is my attempt at being as cool as they are. I take my hat off to them because not only was it difficult, it was also very time consuming. This is the longest time I've ever spent on a monthly setup, despite only making 3 spreads. I had to split my filming over 2 days. After the rough editing of this video, which is basically speeding up the footage 1000%, and cutting out all the unnecessary parts like mixing paint or footage where nothing is happening in the frame, I still had 50 minutes of footage. And out of the 28 monthly Plan With Me videos on my channel, the longest one is 18 minutes long, and that was last month's video. And I'm just not sure if I could pull off a 50 minutes long Plan With Me video. I have no idea what I'd talk about for 50 minutes straight. I'd probably get a sore throat from it too. So I did my best to speed it up a lot more and just cut it down to a slightly less terrifying length. And here we are. I think I succeeded at that. And to be honest, I paint extremely slowly, so it's probably a good thing to speed it up a lot more. And I don't want to complain too much because in the end, I think it turned out super cool, and I'm really proud of myself for trying something different, both in terms of medium and colors. I probably won't paint my weekly spreads though, because it took me way too long to make these 3 monthly spreads, and I just simply don't have the time to spend as much time or more on 4 more spreads. It's not sustainable for me, and I think I would just end up not liking my spreads for October, which is not a good thing because my journal is supposed to help me and not be a source of stress, you know? But when I think about making all of those weekly spreads and painting them the same way that I did the monthly spreads, it doesn't make me feel good. So I'll probably use markers and some of my own printables that I've made for my friends over on Patreon this month. If you don't know, I make printable stickers and journaling kits for my Patreon page every month. You can check it out on patreon.com/mochibujo if that's something that you might be interested in. We also have a secret Discord server where we hang out and talk with each other, and I show some sneak peeks of new releases and upcoming themes and stuff like that. Gouache is tricky because it dries quite a bit lighter than it looks when you're painting it. You would have seen me paint over the cat once more because I thought the gray was a bit too dark. I wanted it to be a bit lighter because I wanted it to stand out from the background. My original idea was actually to not color in the cat at all, just leave it with like pen strokes and just do a very detailed pen drawing. But then I thought that didn't really fit, and especially after adding the paint on the flowers and the branches, it just didn't look right. So I painted the cat gray, and I think it turned out quite alright. I used some gold shimmer watercolors for the border. I didn't want a very yellow gold, so I went for the kind of champagne colored gold, which I think turned out fine. For this whole setup, I'm using the brushes that came with the Mossery art kit because they are the finest brushes that I own. I mostly have larger watercolor brushes, but these thin ones are really great for details. So that's what I did all of the outlines with. I'm kind of treating this setup as a practice for painting detailed gouache paintings. I'm intentionally using very flat colors on this cover page. That means I'm not really focusing on shading or gradient or anything like that, just flat colors with a darker outline. I'm trying to get more comfortable with using paintbrushes to outline the artwork rather than using a pen, which I would feel a lot better with just because it's not long and flimsy. I did use a pen for the eyes and the teeth though, because I really didn't think I'd be able to create a thin enough line for the teeth. And then I'm using white paint to create some life in the painting. I think using white helps a lot to make the piece seem more put together, since it kind of offsets that flat image. So I tried to put a little bit of white on everything, including the leaves, getting a bit of a white stroke. I probably could have made the blue flame coming out of its ears seem more like a flame, but you know, this is what I came up with, and I think it looks quite cool. I used a white jelly roll to write October. I did go over it again with white gouache just to make it a bit more opaque, and then I also used the jelly roll to outline the painting only on the inside of the black frame. I did this to make sure the cat and the flowers stood out from the black background even more, and I made sure to not cover the outlines with a white pen, but rather draw a white line on the outside of the outline, basically outlining the outline. I think it's the small details like this that makes the cover page really come together. Of course, I also had to add some sparkles, because who am I if I don't add sparkles to my cover page for October of all months? I'll show you more shots of the finished cover page in the end, but for now we're moving on to the monthly calendar. I couldn't really find room for a cat on the spread because I made the calendar quite large, but I think it fits the theme nonetheless. I start my week on Mondays, which meant the calendar grid looks really nice this month since it ends on a Sunday. I started by using a thick black fineliner to draw the grid as well as the border around the whole page. I wanted to stay within the same type of components as the cover page, so I painted the flowers with the same purple and the leaves with the same purple-ish color. The leaves are actually the color burnt sienna mixed with black and white, so it's very simple. The flowers are ultramarine and spectrum red with some white mixed in, so very simple color combinations. I'm not a very experienced painter, I'm not very good at color theory, so baby steps. By the way, I think it's very funny how you can see the sun move across the table while I'm painting. It just really shows how long this took. A pro tip for the gold paint, by the way, the ones that I'm using are Finetech watercolors, and if you want a more opaque look for the paint, you should put a few drops of water in the pan, mix it around and let it sit for a bit, mixing in a little bit more water and then making it a thick kind of paint. This way you're not just painting with watercolors, but you're making a more opaque mix. I don't own any gold pens or markers, so this was the only way I could make a gold frame, and I wanted it opaque. I think it worked out quite well. Again, I also went in with black gouache and colored the entire background of the frame black. This time I learned that it's good to wait to paint the outline of the flowers and the leaves until all of the background is painted, because then you don't have to worry so much about overlapping paint. I tried to not stress myself out too much about the fact that I had to outline these flowers without having a pencil line to follow. You know, I'm just so used to only outlining or drawing things with a sketch underneath and not drawing directly with a pen or directly with a brush. So this was definitely a good exercise for me. Like, I knew the shape of the flower, but I didn't have actual lines to follow with my brush. Luckily, these flowers are not too difficult to make. I made sure that the shapes would be very simple, like they're just circles and some wiggly lines. So yeah, not too bad. Maybe this is the reason why I feel a little bit scared of painting, because I can't rely on my sketch as much for like the details and for all the lines and all that. So this is probably a good thing that I am doing this month. I use the same technique of outlining everything with a white gel pen, which makes the different parts of the page stand out more from the black background. I also used an iconic two-way pen to make a little purple header at the top of each of the calendar rows for the dates to go. I'm not sure how I feel about it, but I should have probably used gray or something instead, but it is what it is. You can also see me here filling in the title October with my paintbrush after trying with the jelly roll first. It just wasn't as opaque as I would have wanted it to. I then went ahead and drew a squiggly line around everything, and that's it for the calendar page. I'm going back to using a habit tracker this month, and the reason for that is mostly that I feel like I need to be just slightly more strict with myself in some areas of my life, and I think a habit tracker could motivate me if I use it correctly. I don't think that depriving yourself of too much or being mean to yourself is a good thing, and this is definitely more of an accountability method, I suppose. I'm not trying to force myself to create habits that I don't really find natural for me, if that makes sense. I'm combining this habit tracker with my monthly tasks list and prioritization list because in October it will be extremely important that I prioritize the right things and manage my time well. Things are happening behind the scenes. You'll learn all about it eventually, but for now I don't think it's the right time to talk about it. This is what's happening on this page. I have the habit tracker on the left side and then the tasks and prioritization list on the right side. I colored them both black, so I'll have to write with a white pen on the right hand spread here. And then for the habit tracker, I left the calendars white so that it'll be easier to fill in. And then on the bottom below the habit tracker, I have another demon cat. I really find it fun to come up with a fantasy creature like this. Some of the traditional art of the Japanese demon cats have kind of flame looking things coming out of their ears, but not all, definitely not all. But I decided to include it because I thought it was really fun and different. And then I decided to split the tongue into kind of a snake tongue because that's kind of what I'm used to seeing in like demons and stuff like that. So that's why I did that. I think the blue is also very fun and different in combination with all the other colors here, because the purple and the gray is kind of muted and then the blue is very bright. Now I somehow managed to mix the colors a little bit differently for this page. So I am noticing that the leaves are just slightly more brown and the flowers are slightly more blue purple than red purple, if that makes sense to you. You'll see the first flower that I paint on this page is a bit more red and then the rest are more blue. I don't think it really matters that much. I mean, if I were to paint more realistic looking flowers, they would all have slightly varying colors, right? Because that's just how nature works. So yeah, I think that's fine. Now, while I finish up the spread, I just want to talk a little bit about the spooky season that we are entering. I know that not everyone celebrates Halloween, not everyone cares for it, not everyone thinks it's fun. I think it's really fun. And I love horror movies. I love scary stories. Throughout this whole setup, I was listening to this audio play that's kind of scary and I loved every part of it. It's like eerie and creepy. It's like listening to a horror movie, but better because it has way more episodes, you know? And I know a lot of people don't like horror movies. I'm not sure why I like them because I get really scared, so it's not that it's not scary. But I don't know, maybe I like getting scared now and then if it's in a safe environment, like a horror movie at home in my own bed. And the demon cats are definitely inspired by the spooky season. I don't think I would do this kind of theme for any other month, really. But then again, if you wanted to do a similar theme but without the spookiness, you could make the flowers real marigolds, paint them yellow, orange, and red, and then just have a nice, friendly looking cat instead of a scary demon cat with red eyes and a blue tongue. I'm not a fan of haunted houses and like real life horror stuff. One of my worst experiences was being in Universal Studios in Osaka in Japan during October one year, and at night they just had staff dress up as zombies and run around and pretend to eat people, and that was terrifying. And I don't want people to touch me. I don't want things to be too real. I prefer the horror movies to stay inside the screen. That's where I feel the most comfortable. But I love the witchy vibes and all of that comes with spooky season. And even if you don't like Halloween, maybe you can appreciate the kind of dark and mysterious vibes that come with the beginning of fall. You know, things get darker. Here the sun is setting much sooner than it did just a few weeks ago. The change happens so quickly here. And you know, I'm just looking forward to fall in general. I love summer, don't get me wrong, but it is nice that it smells crisp outside and you can come inside and have a warm cup of tea as often as you'd like, or at least I drink way too much tea probably. One of the very last things that I did was to draw this squiggly line around everything, and this is something I started doing a bit in April and May of this year. I think it's a very easy way to give your drawing something extra. And with some white outlines at the end, this setup is complete. I'm really proud of myself for giving gouache a chance in my journal. Speaking of my journal, it handled gouache really well. I was actually a bit surprised that I had no problems at all. No peeling of the paper, no ghosting, minimal warping, so props to Notebook Therapy for that. I am very impressed. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more content like this. I also have an Instagram account where you'll see more pictures of my October spreads that I'm not showing on YouTube. And thank you so much for watching. Please leave a cat emoji in your comment if you watched this all the way to the end. I hope you'll all have a lovely spooky season, and I'll see you next time. Bye!